Welcome back to Lineage of Lies, where the family's secrets don't stay buried and the daughter who left quietly comes back with the one thing nobody can argue with, the numbers. I'm Bethany. If you've ever watched someone spend freely while telling you there's nothing left, stay right here. The books are about to open. The phone rang at 4:11 on a Tuesday. My brother's voice came through cracked in half. No, Beth, they bought a boat. I was 33, standing in a Columbus parking garage with my keys already in my hand. Brandon was 26, lying in a hospital bed with his knee crushed flat. The surgeon needed $10,000 inside 3 weeks or the joint would fuse wrong forever. I hadn't spoken to our parents in 8 years. On the call, I could hear my mother somewhere behind him, half into the speaker, shrugging. Maybe a limp will teach him responsibility. What I found later in Nana's cedar box turned that quiet into something they should have feared. I am a forensic accountant. My job is finding the place where the money stopped matching the story. So when Brandon said boat, some cold part of my brain filed it before the rest of me could feel it. A boat costs a lot more than $10,000. Scaffolding had collapsed on a job site. His knee took a steel frame. Insurance left a hole he couldn't climb out of. He'd called the only people who were supposed to catch him, and they said they just bought a new boat. 8 years I'd built a careful life on the other side of silence. I told him I'd be there by morning. I didn't tell him why I'd left. My parents told the neighbors Bethany got proud and abandoned them. The truth was uglier. When I was 25, I helped my grandmother organize her papers and found a ledger that wouldn't close. Money from the sale of her husband's land, set aside for the kids, and withdrawals she didn't recognize. I asked my father. He went a color I'd never seen. My mother said, "Don't go digging in things that aren't yours. It only makes trouble." I was 25, no standing, no proof, a whole family telling me I was imagining a hole I'd watched with my own eyes. So I packed a bag, took a job in Columbus, and stopped answering the phone. For 8 years I told myself I'd moved on. But I never forgot that ledger. And now my brother needed $10,000, and my parents had a brand new boat. I drove 110 miles back to Maple Lake before the sun was up. Brandon looked small, leg in a brace, holding my fingers like he was 12. The surgeon was blunt. Cartilage and bone don't wait. 10,000. 3 weeks. A working man's knee. I asked Brandon what Dad had said when he called. He looked at the ceiling. He said they couldn't help right now. He said they just bought a new boat. I kept my voice level, told him not to worry, and said I'd handle it. Then I went to see our parents. The house sits on a slope above the water. The first thing I saw was the boat, white and chrome and obscene, tied at a dock with a fresh coat of stain. The name in gold script, Second Wind. My father came out soft and prosperous. My mother appeared, drying her hands. "Well," she said. "Look who remembered the way back. I didn't come to fight." I said it plainly. Brandon needs $10,000 for surgery in 3 weeks, or he loses his leg. Will you help him? My father spread his hands and talked about cash flow, about how you can't just pull 10,000 out of the air. Behind him, the boat creaked. My mother folded her towel into a perfect square. Brandon's always been careless. Maybe a limp will teach him responsibility. There it was again. The same stone in her pocket. I didn't argue. Arguing with my parents was like arguing with the weather. I left, called the hospital billing office, and paid for the surgery myself. Just like that, the clock stopped. My brother would walk. But sitting in a diner booth with cold coffee, I couldn't let go of one thing. My grandmother's voice, "Don't you worry about you and your brother. I've got it set aside." I'd assumed she meant a few thousand, eaten by a funeral. But Brandon had just faced exactly the emergency she would have meant. And there was nothing. No fund. No envelope. Just a boat and a mother who thought a crushed knee was a teachable moment. So I started digging. At the county recorder's office, I found it. A formal recorded trust. The Ruth Parish Family Trust, established for the medical and educational needs of my grandchildren, Bethany and Brandon, funded with $48,000 from the sale of my grandfather's farmland. $48,000, addressed to us by name. In 9 years, not $1 had ever reached either of us. 2 trustees, my father, and a man named Roy Tasker. Roy ran an insurance agency in town, and my father had funneled him referrals for years. A co-trustee is supposed to be a check. A co-trustee who owes you his livelihood is a rubber stamp. The break in the case didn't come from a courthouse. It came from my brother's closet. I was helping him sort through old boxes and he said, offhand, "Nana's stuff is in that cedar box if you want it." I opened the lid. It smelled like her. Inside, wrapped in a tea towel, a manila envelope. My grandmother's own signed copy of the trust deed, and a letter in her shaking hand. She wrote that she'd sold Grandpa's last 40 acres because she'd watched our father with $1 and didn't trust him to think of us. And then the line that cracked my voice in half. "If anyone ever tells you there's no money for you, child, you show them this." I sat on Brandon's floor and read it out loud. 9 years in the grave, and she'd handed me the weapon. With a lawyer's help, I got the trust's bank records and did what I do best. I reconciled them line by line. 48,000 had come in the year Nana created it. A year after she died, it began to leave, not all at once. That's how thieves convince themselves they're only borrowing. 9,000 the month they redid the kitchen. 12,000 the spring before the RV. And the largest single withdrawal of all, drained just 11 weeks before second wind appeared at their dock. Less than 4,000 remained. I drove out to the public boat launch that evening just to look at it. The boat sat at their dock, gold in the last sun, rocking easy like it had never cost anybody anything. I let myself feel it, then I got to work. Anger is a terrible auditor. I built my file clean and simple: the trust, the withdrawals, the matching purchases, the boat. I rehearsed calm in my motel room because I knew my parents. The second I raised my voice, they'd have their out. "There's Bethany, hysterical, just like we told you." The night before the party, my mother came to my motel door. She tried softness, then grievance, then finally the old stone. "Your brother brought that knee on himself. Maybe a little humility would teach you some responsibility." I asked her quietly, "Mom, did you spend Nana's trust on yourselves?" Her chin came up. "That money was ours to manage. Not we never touched it." Even now, cornered, she could only justify, never deny. The next morning, Roy Tasker found me in the parking lot, sweating in a golf shirt, offering to repay the trust quietly if I'd keep his name out of it. He admitted my father directed every withdrawal. He'd just rubber-stamped money he knew wasn't his. I said no. A quiet fix meant the story stayed buried. That was not justice. That was a coat of paint. My parents were throwing a christening party for the boat. Half of Maple Lake was there, neighbors, church friends, the pastor who'd baptized me. Bunting, champagne and plastic flutes, my father holding court by the stern, making a speech about hard work and the good Lord providing. I took a flute of champagne I didn't drink and waited. When he paused to break the bottle, I said, "Excuse me." Not a shout, the way you'd reach past someone for the salt. It cut through. I stepped to the front and turned to the guests. "I'm Bethany. Most of you knew my grandmother, Ruth Parish. I'd like to read you something." I pulled out her letter and read it plain. The 40 acres. The 48,000. The grandchildren by name. And the line, "If anyone ever tells you there's no money for you, child, you show them this." The doc went silent. Then I laid the bank statements on the food table like cards. 9,000. The kitchen. 12,000. The RV. And the last page, the largest withdrawal, 11 weeks before that boat arrived at the dock. 3 weeks ago, my brother asked these two people for $10,000 to save his leg. They told him no. They told him they'd just bought a new boat. They told him a limp would teach him responsibility. I looked at the faces. I just thought the people celebrating this boat should know whose it really was. It was my grandmother's love. And they spent it on a party. My father erupted, screaming, jabbing his finger, calling me a liar. My mother shrieked. He grabbed a page and crushed it, looking like a man destroying evidence in front of his pastor. I didn't shout back. I just stood there, quiet, while they raged. Rage is a sprint. The truth is a long, slow walk. When he ran out of breath, I stepped close. Nana didn't leave you a boat, Dad. She left them a chance. A chance for Brandon to keep his leg without begging. For both of us to get an education without drowning. You took her chance and turned it into this. I gestured once at second wind. And I walked back up the dock. Nobody tried to stop me. The petition was filed Monday. The evidence was airtight. The court ordered restitution, and a lien went on the boat. Second wind was sold, and the money went into a restored trust for Brandon's rehab and my future children's schooling, exactly where Nana meant it. Roy's business collapsed. My parents kept their house but lost the town's good opinion. Paige called crying to apologize. I told her I understood, but I couldn't trust someone who'd only tell the truth when it was safe. Brandon healed beautifully. By spring he was walking without a limp. He framed Nana's letter and hung it over his couch. I went back to Columbus. I didn't reconcile with my parents. Some doors stay closed for good reasons. My door is open to Brandon any hour of any day. It is closed to anyone who would trade my brother's leg for a boat and call it a life lesson. People ask if I regret it, if family isn't worth more than money. But that was never the question. The money was just how the truth got measured. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who wouldn't trade your leg for a boat. If this one moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Lineage of Lies. Go find your Nana's letter. The paper underneath is always quieter, and always louder, than anything they'll shout at you.